And a good football Monday, a meeting Monday here on Birds 365. We appreciate you meeting with us, Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, as the 32 owners meet out in Arizona this week. Another off-season week with moves and signings and build up to the NFL draft. We'll try and keep you informed over the next couple hours with a couple good guests coming your way. Johnny Mac, when you and I wrapped it up on Friday, we thought there was a possibility Eagles would make a signing over the weekend. They did. Terrell Edmunds, solid starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last 5 years, has played a lot of games and has been part of some pretty good defenses in Pittsburgh. Comes here on a relatively inexpensive. Are you almost getting tired of saying that? Relatively inexpensive? That's what Howie Roseman is doing these days, signing for the Eagles as a potential starting safety. What was the first thing that popped in your mind when you realized Terrell Edmunds now a Philadelphia Eagle?
My first thing was, what the heck is going on with Terrell Edmunds? And yeah, I'd like to crowdsource this because, I mean, this is, as you mentioned, this is a pretty good player. He's still young. Was a first round pick, so he's got the pedigree. Now, he wasn't supposed to be. He was kind of a reach that year, but people forget that tends to drop off into the ether. Has been durable on very good defenses, and he can't make any money. You said relatively inexpensive. I'm going to take up relatively. So when you talk about Rashad Penny,
let me explain my relatively then, if you've got an issue with it. The other Eagle defensive signings this offseason have basically been for the veteran minimum. He is above and beyond that, almost double that if the reports are accurate, that it's $2 million, mostly guaranteed incentives for a little bit more. So in comparison to the other Philadelphia Eagles signings this offseason, that's where I come up with relatively inexpensive.
Well, what I was about to say is I get the contracts for Rashad Penny and Greedy Williams and Justin Evans and Nicholas Morrow. I get those contracts. I mean, that was expected for those players. With this particular player, I don't know. I don't know from two angles, Jody. I don't get why he's so cheap, and I don't get why he's here because he is a traditional box strong safety. That's all he does. That's what he does. He can't play cover two. He can't play center field. And, on one hand, I think this could be a positive when we talk about Sean Desai moving forward, because by definition, if you are playing a free safety and a strong safety, you are not playing the same defense that they played over the 2 years of Nick Sirianni with Jonathan Gannon, the Vic Fangio defense, blah, blah, blah. You are not playing that defense. The whole point of that defense is to play the safeties back to disguise everything from a coverage standpoint till post snap. And if you're putting a free safety and a strong safety on the field, you're alerting the quarterback pre-snap a lot of information. Now, that could be good. That could be good from my aspect because I want to get the heck away from this scheme. So if that shows some open-mindedness on the Eagles' part about shifting away, I think that's a positive. Or it could be just, hey, we're at where we're at, and this is the best player available, and you got to utilize it until you get somebody else who can play what we want to play. It could be one of the two. I don't know which one. More likely the latter. But yeah, I can't figure why this guy isn't making any money. And there's got to be something. And he's a good guy. Already met him virtually, but already met him. No ego whatsoever. We talked about the previous safety. I mean, just no ego. Very well grounded, very polite, very I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Why this guy at 26 years old, this is the people who get paid in free agency. And so that scares me a little bit, to be blunt. Like, why are 31 other teams, a lot of them better fits for his particular skill set? Why aren't they willing? That part concerns me a little bit. I have to admit that.
Question: better fits on other teams. I get that, but of those teams that you would say their overall defensive scheme and his abilities seem to be a better fit, how many of them actually have a need for a safety? The Eagles
Well,
lost
I'd have
both
to
of their
break it
safeties
down.
this year. Yeah,
But
that's I think the point you got to take into consideration. The Eagles were the only team in the NFL that lost, quote unquote, both of its starting safeties via free agency. So they have a need, a hole to fill, even though there are other teams that may play a defensive system that seems to fit Terrell Edmunds a little bit better. They might not have what they perceive as a need for safety because they've got both of their safeties in place. Some of them, I would guess, could upgrade with a signing of a guy like
yeah, well,
Edmonds, believe it or not, at only
that's
$2
my
million.
point.
So maybe they should have, but they might be good enough and say, all right, we're not adding to that position because we're already good at that position.
Well, hey, not that PFF again is the be all end all, but they graded him at number 36. So let's do the math. There's 64 starting safeties. So if you're 36, you're a high level number 2 in this league. You're one of the best so-called safety twos in this league.
Right.
Now they had Minka Fitzpatrick, who's one of the best safeties overall in football. There's a lot of context that goes into it. Maybe playing Minka Fitzpatrick, who is a true star, who might be the best safety in football. He's in the conversation at least.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that helped him. Maybe that elevated him a little bit. Maybe he's really not that good, but that's a hell of a lot better than C.J. Gardner-Johnson was graded. It's a hell of a lot better than Marcus Epps was graded. This one I don't understand, and I've been mulling it for a while. I do not understand because again he's durable. He's got tremendous starting experience, and not only just starting experience on generally a pretty good defense, sometimes really good. Yeah, I mean, this to me on paper at least is a tremendous value pick, but I am a little bit, but I got a little bit of concern because contracts tell you a lot. They do. Now, NFL teams don't always get it right, but they tell you a lot, and they tell you what they think about. Same thing I said about CJ. It tells you a lot. It's not just the Eagles. It's 31 other teams. So that's what and I texted a few people, and I did, my one Eagles guy said the same thing I did because he's the one who gives me all the information about the scheme and all the philosophy. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Not a fit. There's two angles I haven't completely figured out, to be honest.
Here's the reason why I like the signing, and you sort of touched on it, and I'll go even further. Even though you're looking at two Jonathan Gannon fans right here, J-Mac and I are both there on record as saying that we thought Jonathan Gannon did a heck of a job over the 2 years here before he upped and left for Arizona. One of my knocks on Jonathan Gannon was, and will continue to be, I don't think it will be as easily seen or detected now that he's a head coach, but don't kid yourself, you'll see some of it, is that he was pretty damn rigid. That his theme, his scheme, his way of doing things was the way that they were going to do it, and he didn't show a whole hell of a lot of flexibility. That they had guys in assignments doing things expected, play in and play out, and that's exactly it. Do your job. And we're not going to ask you to do anything more. We don't want you to do anything more. Just do your job. Here's how we lay it out for you on paper, and we want you to execute it when you're on the field, which in theory is perfectly fine, but then plays happen and things happen and teams do other things, and you have to be able to adjust. And I believe that Jonathan Gannon was just a little bit too rigid, that his scheme, his way of doing things had to be the only way that you could stop a team on a given play. No, I like teams with flexibility. And it's funny because they like certain flexibilities. They like safeties who can also drop down and play slot coverage. So they do acknowledge flexibility is a good thing, but flexibility between being able to just cover and being a box safety who can go down and also tackle, and every once in a while, maybe on a given play, hide him as a potential blitzer. Oh, we don't need that flexibility. But, if you can be a safety and be a slot corner too, we love that flexibility. The Eagles defense under Gannon didn't incorporate enough flexibility. And maybe, just maybe, as you said earlier, maybe Sean Desai is going to be a little different. Maybe he's going to take someone and go, listen, here's a player. Here's what we can do. Here's what we think he'll be good at. Here's where we think he can help us. And maybe we'll tailor some things to cover up what he's not great at. But we've got him on the field to do the other things. I like that. I'm buoyed by that. I think that's a good thing if that's what the Eagles are showing. Last week, or maybe it was a week before, I told you I think the Eagles missed out because they didn't get involved in the bidding for Chuck Clark, the safety who I like from the Ravens, who I was talking up to come to the Eagles before they ever traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. When they needed a safety last offseason, I said, Baltimore's got 3 starting safeties. They don't need 3 starting safeties. Why don't you trade for a Chuck Clark? And I thought it was going to be more of a price tag than a 7th-round pick, which they got from the Jets. He was a guy who I liked, and he was traded this offseason. And you told me, well, yeah, but they're not going to get Chuck Clark because he doesn't fit. He's a box safety. He's not the kind of safety that the Eagles want. Well, the Eagles just showed you that they are willing to maybe broaden their horizons on the type of players that they get by signing a guy like Edmunds, and they could have traded for a guy like Clark.
Well, a couple things. One, we'll go back to Gannon. I do think this is more like year one in Gannon. There are a lot of people that didn't even know Gannon was trying to play the Fangio defense in year one. A lot of people. Because he had Jannard Avery. He didn't have Hassan Reddick. So he played much more right off the bat, much more 40 fronts, much more 4-man fronts than 5-man fronts because Jannard Avery wasn't good enough. Simple as that. They also didn't have what they wanted at cornerback, obviously, with Bradbury. So a lot of people think they shifted defenses from year one to year two. They didn't. They just played it more in year two because they found players to fit it. So, I think when it's the same as offense, right? I mean, just because you want to play 11 personnel, that's pretty much the basic set in the NFL now, 11 personnel. Doesn't mean you're in 11 personnel every play. When we say that the Eagles use the Fangio philosophy, they're not in it every play. They're in it 70, 75%, the vast majority of the time. So that was always built in. I mean, Gannon wasn't in it 100% of the time. He certainly wasn't in year one. It was less than 75%. But if you're going to play something 75% of the time, you better damn well have the players to play that 75% of the time. So it indicates to me they're going back to the year one play. All right, we don't have this player, so we have to play a little bit differently. And it's not going to be as good from the plot. Now, if Sean Desai learns something in Seattle and says, you know what? I'm on board with McMullen. Too many people are playing this damn defense. We got to shift. We got to evolve. We can't play this anymore. People are figuring this out, whether it's cover 2, cover 3. Now, I think that's really positive. Do I think that's what's going on? No, probably not, to be honest. This is about, what we do know, the whole theme of the offseason. And Terrell's included this, but he's a better player than the 4 other guys that have signed. Well, you could argue Rashad Penny, if he's on the field, is a good player, but that's a big if. The biggest part is they need room to sign Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's the biggest part of it. So all of this kind of factors in, but it was interesting. It was an interesting signing from all those things that I mentioned. Ultimately, I think they got the best safety. You put that safety. like I said it, to me, this is one of my pet peeves. You know this by now, Jody. And I saw it again this morning. I put up on Twitter. It bothers me. It shouldn't bother me. But somebody was running down the Eagles lineup, and they put starting edge rushers Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, and they put starting linebackers N'Kobe Dean, Nicholas Morrow, and Hassan Reddick.
Right.
It drives me insane to the point I want to smack the desk like Nick Sirianni. It drives me flipping insane. It's a different position. They say defensive tackle. Well, you got Milton Williams and Jordan Davis. Yeah, they're both defensive tackles, but they play different positions. Strong safety, and what the Eagles did with C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps, is a different position. It might not be a bad thing. There's a lot of reasons it could be a good thing. But if they want to play the Fangio philosophy, in fact, it goes to this point, Jody. In that defense, they do not even designate. They say right safety and left safety.
Right. They don't have strong and free.
Yes. And they designate it for a reason. It doesn't exist in that defense. Now, I think it could be a great thing that they're moving away from that defense. But anyway, that's my pet peeve.
Understood about the defensive line and the strong and free. The Eagles didn't play with a strong safety this year. In the Fangio defense that they ran, they basically played with 2 free safeties. This upcoming year, you would certainly describe Terrell Edmunds as more of a strong safety. Is he going to be asked to do some free safety type things in this defense? Yeah, I do. I think so. So he's going to have to expand his game, but maybe the Eagle responsibilities will change as well, which I think is a good thing. Like I said, I think that one of Gannon's shortcomings was that he was as rigid as he was, that it was all about the system and we expect you to do this. And if you can't do this, you're not going to be able to play in our system. Well, maybe sometimes the system needs to fit around the player. And we don't know. We won't know until they get out there on the field and start making plays and see where guys are positioned, what they're asked to do, as to whether there will be more flexibility to the Eagle defense coming up this year. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We got 2 good Eagle beat guests coming your way today. Joining us in a mere matter of moments is BLG, Brendan Lee Gouton from Bleeding Green Nation. Hour number 2, our pal Jeff Mosher is going to jump in and give us his insights. Tough week to get Eagle guys. We got these 2 before a bunch of guys heading out to the owners' meetings in Arizona this week. There's a couple things I want to hit on with John, and we'll certainly run by BLG when he joins us. Brendan Lee Gouton of Bleeding Green Nation next here on Birds 365.